Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Today is Monday. It's a new month, Monday, July 1st, 2024. Is that right? Yes. In Greek culture, at the beginning of a new month, we often say kalomina, which means wishing you to have a good month. So I wish that to all of you. Today we have a work session regarding our Transportation Master Plan and Safety Action Plan. My name is John Kafalis, Commissioner from District 1. I'm joined by my colleague Kristen Stevens from District 2, and Commissioner Shattuck McNally, District 3, will not be joining us this morning. Of course, we also have our County Manager, Lorenda Volker. At this time, I'll turn it over to our County Engineer, who could introduce himself and his colleagues, and we'll proceed.
Thank you, Commissioner Kavalis. Mark Peterson, Engineering Director here at Larimer County. Also joining me is Jenny Young with Felsberg, Holt, and Olvig. You should all recognize Jenny from her prior work on regional transportation over the past several years now. Also, we have Gaurav Vashisht. I've probably mispronounced his last name, but Gaurav is also with Felsberg, Holt, and Olvig. So Jenny is the principal in charge of the Transportation Master Plan. Gaurav is overseeing the Safety Action Plan for Larimer County. And Felsberg, Holt, and Olvig is the contractor or the consultant on both of those plans. And they're going to give you more in-depth discussion of sort of the public engagement plan that's part of that we're about to kick off. I would also note that Michelle Bird with your office has been heavily involved in the planning for the public engagement. And so she and her staff have reviewed the products there. Eric Tracy from the engineering department is actually the project manager on this, but he's on vacation this week. So he would be here otherwise. So we have our last version of a transportation master plan was done in 2017. The commissioner's office allocated funding to allow us to update that plan in 2024 here. That's been part of the budget. We got a grant from the Federal Highway Administration to fund the Safety Action Plan work. So that is federally funded. So we're doing the outreach process for both plans in tandem. There are a lot of advantages to going through that process together. And so at this point, I'll turn it over to Jenny and Gaurav, and they'll go through the slides we have here. One thing to note is we have branded it as Larimer on the Move, and so the logo and the kind of tagline, safety, mobility, and connections is up there on the screen.
Okay, good morning, commissioners. So what we have in store for you today, we'll go through a little bit of an overview of Larimer on the Move and the two plans that comprise Larimer on the Move and the schedule, and then we'll share a bit of background on the equity framework, which sets the kind of foundation for the plan and how we integrate equity throughout the planning process. And we'll share a bit about the public involvement plan with a focus on the first phase of engagement that we're intending to start this week. And I believe you have both of those documents in front of you. And then we would like to share, we have some preliminary goals and a vision statement that we would like to share with you and get your feedback on. And then for the safety action plan, we have some preliminary thoughts on a safety commitment for you to react to. So we're hoping to spend most of our time on those items, the goals and the safety commitment. So the Transportation Master Plan really sets the vision for the county's transportation. It identifies the network of multimodal improvements that we anticipate being needed over the next 20, 30 years. And it helps the engineering department to program projects into the capital improvement program. So the transportation plan will be a combination of technical evaluation and community input to establish both that vision of the transportation network and to prioritize projects to move, kind of create a pipeline of projects to move into the capital improvement program. Gaurav, do you want to speak a bit about the safety action plan?
Definitely. Good morning, Commissioners. The Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, it's being funded by the Safe Streets and Roads for All by the US DOT and the Federal Highway Administration. So the purpose of this new approach to safety is a proactive safety approach, and the idea is based along a concept known as the Safe Streets for All concept, or the Safe Systems approach. The idea being that fatalities and severe injuries are unacceptable on our transportation network, and then people should be able to get to where they're going safely. So this is going. So it supports the Vision Zero concept and trying to break the curve on the fatalities and the severe injury graphs that we see usually, or the patterns. So that's the impetus behind it, and the USDOT has put in nationwide funding to all kinds of agencies, so that together as a nation we can move towards this lofty goal. So that's what the county is doing for the unincorporated portion of it. That's the grant that was received. So we're and of course it melds well with the transportation master plan in terms of what needs to be done for the future.
Yeah, safety is always a major component of a transportation master plan. So because of the timing of the grant and the need for an update of the transportation master plan, the timing was right to be able to do these two projects in a really integrated fashion. I think it's particularly important as we engage with the community to, have a kind of united single branding, and it all falls under the same umbrella of Larimer on the Move and getting input about mobility and safety all together, and all things related to how people travel around the county at once. So we kicked off the plans in April of this year, and we plan to have the final documents in March of 2025, so it's about a year-long process. We do have 3 phases of community engagement planned, and this kind of simplified schedule shows the safety action plan kind of technical tasks on the top, and the transportation plan tasks on the bottom, and then the community engagement where the real strong overlap between the two is shown in the middle. So we have 3 phases of engagement, and our hope is to have 3 discussions with you all, this being the first one.
I'll touch upon the equity framework piece, or the role of equity in this process. The USDOT puts a lot of emphasis on equity because historically underrepresented communities or populations have been shown to be a larger portion of a lot of the severe crashes and fatalities in the nation. So the idea is, as we develop solutions and countermeasures for safety, be it through engineering, be it through public outreach, through education, through enforcement, we need to keep equity in focus as we prioritize projects, because the SS4A grant, which is the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant that I mentioned earlier, requires the county to develop a prioritized list of safety improvement projects that can be tracked, and we can, the way we prioritize them would be based on multiple factors such as benefit cost, but equity would be a major piece, that component that does become part of that evaluation. This is some of the work that we've started. We've developed the equity framework that will guide the whole equity process for both the Transportation Master Plan and the Safety Action Plan. And this is an example of the mapping that we're working on in GIS. And we're listed a bunch of these resources, which are national, statewide, regional, and local resources for equity. This can be communities of color. It can be populations that are older populations, 65 plus. They could be disabled communities. They could be, children. One of the tenets of the Safe Streets for All and Vision Zero is that vulnerable user population is extremely important. Traditional safety measures have worked in developing safety and improving safety for vehicles in general, but in this new paradigm, we're looking to consider all road users, pedestrians, bikes, vehicles, transit, everybody who uses the transportation network. So all road users is a big piece of it. And then, of course, the populations that get forgotten in any kind of traditional approach are front and center. So like I said, the vulnerable populations. So this is an example. That was an example of how we would document or start to develop the analysis from a GIS framework.
One moment, please. Yes, Commissioner.
Yeah, so I serve on the Non-Attainment Area Air Pollution Mitigation Enterprise Board, and we, CDOT demoed a tool that's called the Transportation Equity Assessment Map and Scorecard Tool. They call it TEAMS. So I don't know if you're familiar with that one. Yeah, that's a fairly new one, and I think that it's, but it's not quite public yet. They're aiming for the August, September timeframe is what I'm hearing, because I was really excited to see that tool. It has some similarities to EnviroScreen, but I mean, I think it tracks transportation, and it tracks some interesting data that I don't think that our EnviroScreen tracks, like proximity to fresh foods, like a grocery store and things, some really interesting kind of things. So, but you're familiar with it, so I just think it seemed cool, and I'm excited to use it, at both the MPO level and the state level too. So, anyway, just another tool that you can
Yeah,
use.
no, that's great. It's funny that you brought that up. I actually just had a meeting with CDOT last week related to a different project. We're developing a prioritization tool for CDOT's active transportation plan. And we met with the group that's developing the Teams tool, and we're going to get access to the data that they're using. So we can definitely pull that in and see if there are they do have some interesting data sets that I haven't used before. So I think there's an opportunity that we can pull that in.
Yeah, it was kind of EnviroScreen on steroids, a little bit, right?
Yeah.
It had some,
With a real strong transportation focus too, which
exactly,
is nice.
yeah. So-
Commissioner, what's the name of that tool again, please?
It's called Teams, but I know you don't like acronym. Well, I mean, I know you want to know what acronyms mean, and it stands for Transportation Equity Assessment Map and Scorecard Tool.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for bringing that up. Moving on from equity, and of course, a good portion of this whole process is understanding what the communities need from safety. So public outreach is a big piece. Stakeholder involvement and public outreach is another big important piece, so central piece of this SS4A Comprehensive Safety Action Plan. So these are the different methods that we are developing, and Jenny will touch upon our phases of community engagement. But this is an example of the different ways we can incorporate equity in the outreach process as well. We don't want to just do outreach as a box to check. So we want to go to the communities. We want to go where they are to answer to ask the questions related to safety, to understand what's important to the communities, what are the deficiencies that they see that we might be missing. So it helps to build a larger picture. The language accessibility is an important piece. Not just, make understanding what languages are required to do this kind of outreach, to get the information that we need. Meanwhile, the cultural sensitivity is another aspect that we need to be very aware of, and understanding what different communities might need in terms of safety and what is important to them. The targeted outreach is, of course, related to some, language accessibility is related to targeted outreach, and the diverse methods is also related to the targeted outreach. It's like what is needed so that we can, it's not just do like a pop-up event here or there. And we're also doing a statistically valid survey that's being sent out soon. So that'll be sent to communities around, all around unincorporated Larimer County, and it'll be physical mail, so they can actually read the information, take their time with it, and let us know of their priorities. We are also developing a web tool where people can go online and go to this sort of like a GIS map and drop a pin at locations where they feel they have some comments to add, some issues, safety that they want us to be aware of. And when they drop the pin, they can add a comment, they can tell us what kind of focus areas that they're interested in. So these are multiple methods that we want to make sure that we've used successfully in the past and will be using here as well.
I have a question, and that is, how do you intend to overcome what we sense is from there's a certain amount of weariness from communities of color and underrepresented groups, with the emphasis on equity, diversity, and inclusion over the last number of years. So there's a certain amount of weariness. I'm wondering how you plan to overcome that. And of course, trust for government institutions is not at an all-time high. And my experience working, for example, this weekend with, there was an event, and something called the BIPOC Alliance was part of the sponsors of the event. I mean, there's definitely a weariness and a mistrust from communities of color, to engage with government institutions. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that and what your plans are for, if you think that's a real issue, and how do we overcome that?
I think in the framework that we developed, the equity framework, we tried to touch upon how we would reach out and create this sense of trust, or I think a lot, at least from the safety action plan side of things, and of course I can turn it over to Jenny on the TMP piece, but I think from the safety action plan, in this sort of targeted outreach, reaching out to those communities on where they are comfortable, where they are able to meet, and trying to portray the picture of the safety issue that we're trying to solve, which is, what is needed, what is important to them, and what are the countermeasures needed to solve safety for all road users, which includes them. I think a big piece of that trust issue is making sure that we are able to convey this information on how important this is and how central equity is to the whole process to be successful, to be acceptable by the USDOT, by FHWA. I don't know if you want to add to that.
And one tactic that we're trying to use to kind of overcome that weariness is to engage with leaders of different communities. We did go to the EDI advisory board last week. And one of the suggestions they made was to reach out to organizations that represent people with disabilities. So we're planning to reach out to Foothills Gateway and other organizations that represent some of these disadvantaged communities and ask for their help in getting the word out, and use these kind of trusted leaders in different communities to help encourage their constituents to participate and the importance of hearing from them.
Thank you for your responses. And I did notice in a subsequent slide, when you were identifying some of the stakeholders that you're doing the outreach to, the category, there were different organizations represented, but the category for groups working with and representing people with disabilities, it was kind of a broad category. We weren't calling out particular organizations. So that caught my attention, and when we get to that slide, perhaps you can speak to that. And then if time allows, I'd be interested to hear more about what other recommendations the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Advisory Board provided to you folks. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
So this is again out of the equity framework. Talking about methodology for evaluating, prioritizing projects. So I think I mentioned briefly that SS4 requires equity to be used as one of the measures of prioritizing projects. So developing a list of projects that improve safety with equity and diversity included in it as a factor. So these are the different methods that we want to use for prioritizing the project. So I'd mentioned briefly benefit cost, which is the traditional benefit cost of a project, and as cold as it sounds, benefit here, would be how many lives are saved and how many injuries are saved, and everything's associated with a dollar value. And the cost is obviously the cost to build a project. So that's sort of like a benefit cost analysis. Anything above one is potentially a beneficial project in which you have more benefit than cost. The others are, of course, the equity impact assessment is sort of a factor that we would use in addition to some of these other ones, like benefit cost, to provide an overall ranking number for these projects. The GIS analysis, some of the maps that you just saw were based off of the GIS analysis. This is a very handy tool for us to map all the information that we have, because the TMP and the Safety Action Plan have all kinds of myriad kinds of data, a lot of data. So this is a very handy tool to basically visualize and to connect all of that data. And of course, in the end, the data-driven decision-making, we don't want to forget all the work that's been done in the past, the work that's being done as part of the TMP. So to build this larger overall connected picture of safety improvements, we want to make sure that we use what was done before, bring it within this new safety paradigm of safe streets for all, and then develop a plan that's holistic in view.
Commissioner, I'd like to ask another question. Sure. I think I don't want to lose it as we move on. So I'm curious regarding, for example, the first bullet point, GIS analysis, quarter-mile buffer of a proposed project. So as an example, the county just completed what I think is an excellent safety improvement project on County Road 17 between Willocks and Highway 287. There were no shoulders for bicycles, and I just came down that road and it looks great. And so I guess my question is, given that as an example, how might we apply this first bullet point? In other words, it looks like it's looking at a quarter-mile buffer. How would that work? How would that look for those of us who need real-life examples?
I think what that buffer is about is collecting information within that quarter-mile buffer. So if you have a corridor such as CR17, who would be more likely to use? So you're developing this buffer so you can map the equity side of things, the demographic side of things, the vulnerable poor population side of things. So we don't want to just have a linear mapping. We want to have a buffer so that we can identify all these resources that we need to take into consideration. So that's where the buffer comes into play. It's not just focused on, curb to curb. It's actually a lot more than that. Who is using that facility and who is it that we need to consider in that evaluation?
So is the idea that doing that kind of analysis, extending out a quarter mile from the roadway, would we be asking questions like, how might other people in that neighborhood benefit from this safety improvement?
Yes.
If they're riding bicycles or walking?
Yeah.
Okay, that helps. Please proceed.
Okay, so I think Gaurav provided a good framework of how equity will be integrated into throughout the planning process and including in the public engagement. But I'm going to take a step back for a minute and just talk sort of big picture about our 3 phases of public engagement. So the first phase that we're about to launch is really about understanding values and understanding what types of improvements are important to the community. As Gaurav showed you the example of the map where people will be able to drop pins, and then we'll have a follow-up survey question. After they drop a pin, they'll be asked a question about what types of improvements are important. That will actually mirror the language that we used in the polling that we did for the transportation funding. So we'll be able to kind of use both data sets of public input. And then the second phase of public engagement will be around priorities. So here we'll be asking the community, recognizing that there's not enough funding to do all of the improvements at once that we would like to do, understanding what the highest priorities are. And really, there will be an education component to it in understanding that the trade-offs of, investing in one thing means, we can't do everything at once and so forth. And then the third phase of engagement will be focused on validation, where the community will have a chance to review the draft transportation and safety plan and be able to provide their feedback on it before it moves to adoption. Okay, so a little bit more about this first phase of engagement. As I said, this will be really focused on values and understanding what is important to the community. There will be a stakeholder working group meeting that I think we've actually pushed back the date a bit. I think the new date is July 18th, when we'll be working with stakeholders, which includes the municipalities within Larimer County, adjacent counties, CDOT, Transport, and other transit service providers, as well as a lot of the organizations like school districts and emergency response that touch transportation, and we're hoping to start the conversation about, where the overlapping benefits of investing in transportation are with those stakeholders, and also leverage them to help get the word out with their communities to engage in the online and the pop-up booths. So this first, as far as the public, we'll have the two kind of main opportunities. One is through the website. We'll be directing people to engage on the website, where we'll have this Larimer on the Move webpage where they can do the PIN map and take the quick survey, and they'll have access to contact information and a little background information about the planning process and timeline. And then we're planning to have a series of booths where we'll be at community events that are already planned. So we're not asking people to come to us, we're going to the community. And the first one will be on Saturday at the Red Feathers 4th of July event, where we hope to get lots of engagement. We also have we'll have a booth at the county fair on August 3rd. And we also will be at the community conversations in LaPorte on August 10th. And then we did get some feedback from the EDI advisory board on a few additional possible locations. Farmers Market in Berthoud was brought up as an idea. The concert series in Loveland was another idea that was brought up. So we're making our final push here to get the other community activities scheduled for this first phase.
Yes, Commissioner Stevens.
Yeah, so I don't know what your bandwidth is, but I will say that I am having a listening session here in the hearing room on July 24th. It is going to be like a mock administrative matters meeting to try to get people, so people sometimes don't always are uncomfortable engaging with us because, like, if they haven't before, then it can be intimidating. And so this is to sort of walk people through what our meetings are like and when you would speak and what we're talking about when we say things. But I'm mentioning it because we will have translation services there, and we are engaging with the Family Leadership Training Institute group, which is a group that's a program that's run out of our extension office, and they have ties to a lot of people, communities of color, and there's a lot of people that attend that are, first generation Americans and things. And so it might be a good opportunity to, you could be technically a presenter at the mock administrative matters meeting, but because there's translation services there, it might be a nice opportunity for you to engage with, and we are inviting a lot of the Spanish-speaking and Latinx-focused community groups to join us. And so, anyway, just wanted to mention that because it might be, it's Wednesday, July 24th from 9 to 10:30 a.m. So.
And thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome.
Along those lines, I'm glad that you're planning to be in LaPorte at the community conversation on August 10th. Does your bandwidth allow you to do something like at a Wellington community conversation? Because there's a lot of discussion up there about connectivity issues. We do have August 1, I believe, is our next meeting, and I think Commissioner Stevens and maybe some other folks from the transportation world will be there. I don't know if this fits into that. I'm not sure. But August 1 will be our next Wellington, and then we'll have one in September. And then I'm wondering, with regard to Red Feather Lakes, it's great that you'll be up there for the 4th of July stuff, but we'll be up there July 25th for our community conversation. And we have our mitigation coordinator, wildfire mitigation person, Josh, will be presenting. But I wonder if that's another opportunity, or you guys think you got Red Feather covered.
Well, and I would say these are all great ideas, thank you. And we can work on, kind of prioritizing where we, have our booths. But I think even beyond that, we can provide, like little business cards and things that if there are events that you all are at, if you wouldn't mind sharing those with folks, as you're just having discussions to help get the word out, that could be an option too.
Well, and I guess we can work with Mark to see strategically some of these other events where it might make sense, because we'll likely be up in Livermore again, at least at the end of August, but that has a particular focus.
Right, we'll have more discussions about it, and certainly if, it's a matter of getting staff at some of these meetings, we don't necessarily need to bring Jenny or Gaurav in, but we'll be happy to try to support you folks.
Yes, Commissioner Stevens.
Yeah, and I would just bring up, because Commissioner Shattuck McNally is not here, that
Of course.
things in the southern end of the community or around the Estes Park area might be valuable as well, so.
Yeah.
And she provided some of the input at the EDI meeting. She was online and mentioned some of those events.
Commissioner Kafal, I'd like to go back to your comment about the EDI, about the communities with disabilities, and that was something that the EDI Advisory Board kind of caught on to too. So they had asked us to make sure that we do some research to find out, who the representatives are there. So we do have the Foothills Gateway organization flagged that we'll be reaching out to, and then if there are other organizations.
The Arc of Larimer County, because they've actually done work in this space to ensure that bus stops were, within the city of Fort Collins, they've done some work, successful work at enhancing the accessibility of bus stops in the city of Fort Collins. But the Arc of Larimer County.
Great, perfect.
And there's Easter Seals, Colorado. And there's a Northern Colorado Down Syndrome Association. There are a bunch of groups. We can talk offline if it's helpful. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so with that kind of overview of the equity framework and public engagement, I'd like to dive into the draft goals. We have a series of 7 draft goals that will be really the foundation for the transportation and safety plan. These will be the basis for how we develop strategies, identify projects, prioritize projects. So it's really important that we, spend some time up front feeling comfortable and making sure that the goals really articulate the direction that the county intends to go. So the way we developed these, we took the goals or the guiding principles from the 2017 Transportation Master Plan, and then we looked at how we could refine those goals and augment those goals to align with your strategic plan, your 2024 through 2028 strategic plan, as well as the Climate Smart Future Ready. And then we also took the input that we heard from the community through the poll that we did in April about what really resonated with them around investing in transportation, and integrated some of those ideas and values into these draft goals. So I'd like to just go through each of these with you, if you don't mind, and then if you could share your reaction to these. And please know that these are very draft. There will be opportunities, I imagine, sharing. These are not part of the first phase of public engagement per se, but I envision sharing them with the public for their reaction in the second phase of engagement. So there will be opportunities to continue to refine these goals as the planning process proceeds. So the first goal is around safety, ensure a safe and secure transportation network that prioritizes the prevention of road deaths and serious injuries for all road users through safe systems approach. So you can see we're really aligning the language there with the safety action plan and the safe systems approach language. Resilience, maintain and enhance the transportation network to optimize investment in infrastructure, ensuring long-term resilience, reliability, and emergency preparedness. This was something that the emergency preparedness really particularly resonated with folks in the polling that we did, you might remember. Travel options, develop and promote a diverse and sustainable transportation network by expanding alternative transportation mode choices, reducing carbon emissions, and encouraging a shift towards greener, more efficient travel options. Efficiency, upgrade the county roadway network to improve traffic flow, reduce congestion, and enhance the overall efficiency of the transportation system. Equity, ensure equitable access to transportation and enhance the quality of life for all residents, focusing on underserved and vulnerable communities. regional connections, enhance and expand regional transportation to improve connectivity and infrastructure between rural and urban centers. And lastly, funding, secure and sustain long-term funding for transportation infrastructure, leveraging county funds for partnerships and grant opportunities.
You would like us to react,
Please.
recognizing that we try not to be reactionary, we try to be more proactive. But I imagine, Commissioner Stevens, you have some initial thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think these are great goals. I think that as we talk about a safe systems approach, I don't know that people all know what that is, and so I hope that there's, I'm sure that's defined later in a, but I don't think that, I think making sure that people can find out what that actually means. Yeah, I mean, that's the only comment that I have right now.
Thanks, Commissioner. I have a comment or two, and actually, before I offer mine, Lorenda, are there any insights or that you'd like to offer, please?
I was thinking something similar under efficiency. I'm not sure that the general public would understand that that's congestion reduction. And I know that these are probably internal goals. These don't get published necessarily in these ways, but, the goals are good. I think the things that resonate with people are their daily lives, and efficiency may not connect to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lorenda. And my thoughts are, overall, I think this looks good, very good. Building on what these two folks have said, I wonder if any, and recognizing that these perhaps are internal goals, are we running any of this material through plain language filters? Because I think there are ways of framing things that are more relevant to regular folks. So I think that's important. And, for example, where we say reducing carbon emissions, I wonder, should we add on or replace with, something about clean air or addressing air pollution, those kinds of things. And then, so a lot of these things are interconnected. So, for example, when we reduce congestion or address traffic jams, we're also helping with air pollution. So is there a way or a proper way to connect some of these issues? Those are my thoughts at this time.
Great, thank you all for your feedback. We're guilty of a group of engineers working on developing these, so the plain language
Yes,
is
we have
noted.
had many interactions over the years with our engineers. We love our engineers and our road and bridge folks and all that, but there is a certain kind of technical mindset that
Yes.
maybe we have a role in helping to stretch our comfort zones a little bit.
Guilty as charged.
And I really like the comment too about showing the connections, among all of these goals, because they all are very interconnected. So, there may be kind of a preface to these goals that notes that. And that's probably a good segue to, we did draft also this vision statement that does kind of pull them together. So we would love to hear your reaction to this vision statement as well. And I think we could further articulate that, the connected nature of the goals beyond just this vision statement too. A safe and resilient transportation network achieved by addressing infrastructure maintenance, supporting diverse transportation options, equity, quality of life, and regional connectivity, and securing long-term sustainable funding.
Thank you, Jenny. Commissioner Stevens, you're first.
Okay. Yeah, in general, I like it. I think it's pretty all-encompassing of what we want to do. I do think that, I don't know that I would use diverse transportation options. I might say, and I think it's used up above. I would say, I don't know.
Multiple or?
Yeah, I feel like diverse like, for some groups, I think it can be a word that means something different. You know what I mean? I mean, because we want diversity in transportation options, but maybe thinking of a different word, just, I guess,
A range of or?
a range of transportation options, or, yeah. Might be better.
Okay.
Could we just remove the word diverse?
I would remove it from
And just
As describing
supporting-
transportation.
Supporting transportation options.
Yeah. A variety of transportation options, or you could just write transportation options, yeah. Because options, I think, says that
Implies.
there's more than, one way to get around.
And if I may just add to that, is there anything else, Commissioner?
No, there's nothing else.
Just to add to that, and we'll also check in with our county manager, a word that comes to mind rather than options are choices. People like to have choices. So that's something for your consideration. And the only other thought, and again, not intending to quote, water this down a bit, but resilient, I wonder, again, depending on who the audience is, I think most of us get what resilient is, but I don't know if there's a word that regular folks could relate to. Flexible, responsive, just a thought, and resilient may just be fine. So that's my feedback. Lorenda, your thoughts, please?
I guess when I look at this, it feels like you've buried the lead a little bit, because really, if we don't secure the funding, the rest of it is not possible. And so I wonder if you flip that to the first line, securing long-term sustainable funding for a safe and resilient, or some other word.
Great. Hope that's helpful.
It's very helpful. Thank you all. Okay, with that, we can make some refinements to the vision and goals, and we'll continue to, vet those with the community and stakeholders. And I'll turn it over to Gaurav for the safety action plan commitment.
So one of the key requirements of the SS4A grant, and there are two parts to that grant. One is the act for developing the action plan, which the county received, and the second one is the implementation grant. So the prioritized list of projects that I mentioned earlier, those to be able to implement those, that's another set of grants that the county would have to apply for. So the key requirement, so they have eight requirements in the grant, and the first one is a commitment to the goals, basically for Vision Zero goals that we talked about earlier. This one is just to give you a quick snapshot of the safety situation as it relates to killed and severely injured. These are usually called KSI crashes, but we're talking about fatalities and severely injured people. Just as a background, there's a range of injuries in a crash database. It ranges from severely injured, which means that they're unable to leave the site of the crash and are taken to the hospital and are admitted there, to a suspected, maybe somebody got whiplash kind of thing. But so this portion focuses only on the most severe and the fatalities. And there was obviously a dip through the pandemic time because of the lower volumes of traffic, but it has picked up since then. Although there has been a safety improvement if you compare numbers from 2017-18 to last year, but we're still seeing, as you can see, for example, the fatalities are sort of holding steady. Even though the severe crashes have dropped a little, but again, the idea with this is to make a big impact on this graph that you're seeing, to get it down significantly. This is just a snapshot of the current commitments in our area. So these are the Vision Zero commitments. It starts with a larger DRCOG commitment, and they've committed to 0 fatalities and injuries. They recently updated it to 2040, 2045, 2 different dates for severe injuries and fatalities, respectively. I don't think they've published it yet. I haven't seen it on their website, but I've been in conversations with their Vision Zero folk who told me about that. Denver obviously has had one Vision Zero document, and they've committed to a Vision Zero of 0 KSI crashes, as I mentioned earlier, by 2030. Boulder recently finished theirs Vision Zero plan as well, and they have a commitment of 2030 as well. And of course, Fort Collins, the city has a Vision Zero action plan, and their commitment is 2032 for 0 KSIs, or killed and severely injured. This excerpt is from the Vision Zero toolkit that the FHWA has put together, and it's just really stresses on the importance of commitment from leadership. it is the driving force and, the sustainable driving force behind such an action, because it is different from the norm that's been around for decades, and we are trying to break a curve of fatalities and severe injuries. So, that's why the importance of a commitment, as well as a target and sort of like a tracking mechanism for those targets is important.
Looks like Commissioner Stevens has something that she would like to add.
So my question is, are there any penalties if you don't achieve Vision Zero deaths and, by a certain date? Are there penalties for grant funding? Are there?
That's a great question, and that's a question that's been asked several times by many in this room.
Well, we're all on the.
And we have.
We try to be in sync.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great question. I mean, the idea is setting a lofty goal, because this is a lofty end that we are trying to achieve. Vision Zero started in Europe, 50 years ago, and they've been working towards it since. But what we're trying to do here is set a lofty goal, because and that's the DOT stance, is without a lofty goal, we will never reach there. We'll just have this trend that is gradually going down. And I keep mentioning break the curve is something that I've read in their documentation, is we literally have to make a big difference and a big dip. So that's the big commitment here, and which is why the safe systems approach is so important, because that's a holistic, multidisciplinary view of the crash picture. So it changes the paradigm from, safety is it's whoever gets hurt. It was, if you're using the road, it's your responsibility. Analyze the crash data, see what was wrong. In the safe systems approach, it's recognizing that killed and severely injured is unacceptable. It recognizes that even though we want to make the best designs, humans make mistakes, and just because a human makes a mistake, they shouldn't get killed or severely injured in a crash. And it recognizes that humans are vulnerable, because there's only so much energy that we can take. So the system itself needs to be able to provide that kind of a paradigm for people to not get hurt so bad. It talks about, so safety is proactive. So proactive safety is one of the tenets of this approach. And then, of course, that safety is everybody's responsibility. So this is the larger picture of, and of course, post-crash care, how important that is. So this is all of these. So I'm just setting the background for this lofty goal is no longer just about analyze the data and put in more shoulders, which is obviously would be a great countermeasure, but even more than that. So it goes towards policy, legislation, education, enforcement, engineering, equity. And that's why equity is such an important piece, is if you just keep focusing on hotspots, you will lose the equity picture, where a lot of fatalities might be happening, but other locations might have more, larger number of crashes. So to come back to the question, which was, is there, we've asked the question directly multiple times, and the response we got from FHWA was, I don't think so. So, I have not heard of any, like dire consequences, but the idea is to show that there is a concerted effort in all of these realms that I mentioned of the safe systems approach, of improvement, we have outdone our legitimate outreach, ethical outreach, of doing equity considerations and analyzing the data, be data-driven, but then also listen to the communities as to what their needs are. So I think my personal opinion is that I think if a process is shown that we're following what the DOT wants us to do, with the understanding and the goals behind it, and it's a legitimate process and a legitimate safety action plan, and we go through those implementation and work to utilize the dollars that are received in that manner, I think we'd have to go with their response of, I don't think so.
Yeah, and and there again, I am totally supportive of Vision Zero, and I understand that some of it involves human behavior, which is, I think, the education piece, but is probably the trickiest piece to, how to, I think we've done a good job of convincing people not to drink and drive, but people still do that, for example. And so, I want to figure out how to do that and make sure that, yes, we're committing to it, but also getting buy-in from our community, honestly, that, you're also going to commit to maybe not speeding and not using substances and driving and, some of these other, or driving distracted and stuff like that. So, I mean, it would be nice to see like we have to do this work together or it's not going to happen kind of thing. And then I guess the only other thing I would say about it is I think there is a commitment among this group to address these safety issues we have in our community. But, I mean, the funding piece is huge. So we were just given a presentation on 287 of like 60 to $80 million worth of safety improvements we needed to make on just one stretch of highway in our community. And, I mean, how do we get to Vision Zero if we can't get the dollars to do those projects that we know would make our community safer? So we are really scrambling, and our staff has been really good about trying to get those dollars to come in, and we're committed to, the Safe Streets for All. But I will say that, it's too bad that, we can't do everything we want, right? And so, yes, we will definitely try, and we want to do this work, but we also know that there's barriers that we maybe don't have control over. So that's it. I'm off my soapbox. Thank you.
So I know we have one more slide, but I'll just quickly comment, reinforce what I hear. One thing I hear from Commissioner Stevens, the buy-in piece is really critical in anything we do. Secondly, regarding the accountability piece, I think that I saw in the presentation there's a validation part of the public involvement plan. And so if there's still some ambiguity from the feds, what a surprise. I just thought I'd insert that. But all the more reason why we need to make sure we have the best accountability measures, to know that we are actually making a good faith effort to achieve some of this stuff. So I offer that. And I have another, well, I guess I'll offer my question. It relates to these goals. But in terms of prioritization, and it talks about various stakeholders, and it says Department of Transportation, but I don't see CDOT in there. So, for example, if you go to Livermore, Red Feather, you hear a lot about Highway 287 safety improvements. CDOT has presented their safety improvement plan back in the spring, and they identified, I think, 15 projects. There's some level of funding, but how does this prioritization process align with or create a symbiotic relationship with, projects that are already prioritized, and so we can build on that work? Any thoughts there, colleagues?
That's a great question. So even though this is unincorporated Larimer County project, so.
Well, that's up there, it's unincorporated.
Yeah, and CDOT roads are not part of it because the SS4A grant is, DOT cannot apply for it. But one of the things that we do want to do as we get more into this analysis piece is include CDOT and others, emergency response and, multiple stakeholders, as in people who do, so if it's fire, PD, emergency response, CDOT, these are the people who are dealing with this every day. So as an expert group, we do want to do a coordination with them to get their input, to understand what they're doing and how we can,
I just think that's critical. And yes, 287 is a state highway, but of course, Red Feather Lakes Road, Al Canyon Road, they all feed into it, and all those connections are really important that, we're.
Yeah, and CDOT has their commitment to safety as well. Their commitment is a little different, but, they're doing fiscal year 2024. They want to have, I think the published is 17 and a half, but they're coming up with a more aggressive reduction, and then they have a similar one for 2025 of killed and severely injured. So they also are trying to break the curve, so they're trying to do these safety improvements. One of the difference from, say, an $80 million project to something like this plan is the proactive safety approach, which is about, just to touch upon that, is to identify risks rather than hot spot locations. So you identify risks in, say, the geometry of a roadway. So if you have a certain kind of curve and you're seeing a lot of crashes, you do identify a countermeasure and apply that to all the curves that you see in unincorporated Larimer County, whether or not you've had those crashes there. And usually these measures can be not as expensive and can be applied regionally. So you basically incrementally improve safety and save a life here and save a life there to reach your goal. CDOT, of course, has multiple other priorities with important routes, which might be a truck route or something. So
Well, that's great. As much as we can push the envelope, because I think there still remains a tendency to operate in silos, and I hope we can continue to do a good job of overcoming some of that. No need to respond to that one.
So this is so we've sort of got the ball rolling on developing the first requirement of the SSWA, which is, leadership commitment to a goal. And so this is something that we've put together and would love to have your feedback on it. And it says, Larimer County recognizes that traffic deaths are unacceptable and preventable, and as part of its role as stewards of the transportation network, the county will adopt Vision Zero with a goal to end traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries among all road users. So that is the preface to this. And it continues with the purpose is, again, to commit to, of the safety action plan, to commit to end traffic-related fatalities, serious injuries occurring on unincorporated Larimer County roads, commit to significantly reduce traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries by 67% occurring on unincorporated Larimer County roads by 2045. This goal supports the fiscal year 22 to 26 DOT strategic plan safety performance goals, which they such as medium-term goal of 2/3 reduction in roadway fatalities by 2040. Commit to develop and adopt a Vision Zero safety action plan as a comprehensive and holistic strategy to support the commitment to end traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries occurring on unincorporated Larimer County roads. I think there's an on missing. Develop a comprehensive Vision Zero strategy that unifies existing efforts and elevates improvements through engineering and street design, education and engagement efforts, enforcement and technology, evaluation and data analysis, and equity. Develop a holistic approach to Vision Zero with coordination with leadership among county departments and stakeholders within Larimer County, including but not limited to area agencies, businesses, nonprofits, community-based organizations, and community members.
Number 2 up there is kind of getting at a specific goal for Larimer County. And there's been a fair amount of discussion among staff and, our experts here in terms of how do we adopt something that's fairly lofty, if you will, or, but yet not out of the realm, totally out of the realm of, possibility or achievement.
That's a good point.
So,
yeah, 1 and 2 are two similar sounding but slightly different goals. The first one is the lofty goal of 0, and it doesn't have a date associated with it, but it is that the eventual goal is 0. Mm-hmm. And the second one has a discrete percentage or 2/3 reduction in the fatal and seriously injured crashes with a date associated with a year.
Commissioner Stevens, any final
I was just
thoughts or
wondering,
insight?
does the Department of do you feel like that would be acceptable because it's not exactly saying, because are these other communities that you listed committing to 0 by that date certain? Ours is a little more,
So,
is it too wishy-washy, I guess is what I'm asking.
well, this goes back to what is achievable, and of course, we're not quite sure what are the consequences if you don't get to 0 and you have one fatality, that kind of stuff. We have reached out with that question as well, and the response we got was, in order to be eligible for the implementation grant, we have to commit to Vision Zero, so eventual 0, and we have to commit to either a date for either 0 fatal and seriously injured crashes, or a date for significant reduction in those. So the goal is still 0, and we hope we can do that and, achieve more than that. But I think this was what we decided as a group sounded as a practical approach to this.
Okay, yeah, that looks good to me, yeah. I mean, there again, I don't want to say that, we all want to get to 0, right? I just, and maybe we can, maybe with some of these, if we get some of these implementation grants, we can move that along. So I'm hopeful, but I'm also know that counties take care of 40% of the roads in this country and only have gotten 8% of the federal grants that have come down through the bipartisan infrastructure law. So we are somewhat at a disadvantage in securing those funds to be able to do some of this work.
And we have a pretty challenging road system in the fact that a lot of it's mountainous and can't be widened. You can't make recoverable slopes coming off the sides of those roads and things of that nature.
So my 2 cents as we wrap up here. First of all, thank you for an excellent presentation. Thank you for all your hard work. I think the sentiment is, we're certainly supportive as best as we can help this process. Regarding these goals, the only thing that I would bring up is whether or not there should be a specific call out to State Department of Transportation. I don't see that in there. Again, it's your decision, just my input. And also the reference to Vision Zero, I think we use that term, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's a non-issue, but I believe we use that in terms of goals related to suicide rates. So I don't know if that has come up at all. And again, it may be a non-issue, but it is, I think there was Vision Zero with regard to suicide rates. And I wanted to bring that to your attention. And then finally, my wife, who was involved in a pedestrian vehicular accident where she sustained pretty reasonable injuries, I'm sure she'll be very happy to know we're working on this. That's all I have. Learned anything else? Mark, any closing comments on your part, sir?
No, just thank you for your time and your input. This is really valuable.
You're welcome. Did we get through all the stuff you guys wanted to do? Yeah. Okay, then at 11:01 a.m., we are adjourned. I'd love to get the spelling of your name or business card.